Open discussion, anything that wasn't to be discussed, Jake?
I was going to give a little bit of a longer update on the EDA Reform Committee, but I'll distill to the most important part, which is I think this group needs to discuss what role we want to play if, I think the way I presented it to the EDA, the conversation for the sake of argument, for the sake of arguing or trying to figure out what the EDA is going to look like tomorrow. If the EDA looked like it, let's just say it is today, 2 years from now, what role do we want to play, if any, in it? Do we want to have appointed members on the EDA board? If so, do we feel that should happen without any kind of financial considerations being part of the county and town EDA, like the arrangement that was before? I think it was 70-30.
70-30, 20.
Something like that. Going back to that original arrangement. Are they just ad hoc positions? There's no financial arrangements. The bottom line is that if this council wants to have a seat at the table, what is it? What does that look like? And if we don't want to have any the same arrangements with the financials, why? Let's move forward that way. So basically, I need to come back in the next month with the town council's stance on what we'd like if the EDA was to move forward in some sort of continual structure of the way it is today.
That's good, and I know we eventually get to this point. Thanks, Jake. In our consideration, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Napier, the town of Front Royal could request from the Commonwealth a designation or have them institute a law that would allow the town of Front Royal to form its own IDA. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's not uncommon in the Commonwealth. Many jurisdictions smaller than ours have that designation. So in essence, Warren County could have their IDA and have their IDA, and the town of Front Royal could petition the General Assembly. And for us to do that, we would probably want to get that, have that request made soon, so that our elected members could start considering it. So I think that needs to be part of the discussion.
There's one more important piece. Doug, you can correct me if I'm missing something from this, but it seemed to me that the discussions from the county side is, number one, the EDA is basically moving in. It is becoming a department of the county. Mm-hmm. And it looks like that's the move that they're considering. Or I think Doug Stanley at least mentioned that one of the Board of Supervisor members have asked for considerations of making this completely a department of the county. It already is basically doing that. I mean, they've already basically created an entity line under the county budget where the monies come into the county and then out to the EDA. So the step that's being proposed is making it just completely a county department. And I think that's an important piece of information for you all to know. Obviously, if that happens, I mean, it's more to your point of, do we want to be at that table or have independent IDA?
It's sad. It's sad from many perspectives that there's duplicating efforts. But Gary?
Yeah, something to keep in mind with this too, and it's a pretty good point. I think we need to have the skin in the game at the EDA, but that being said, I do not want to assume any of the financial shortfallings that they have right now. So that's what I'm a little leery about as far as joining them. So my vote would be to go and start a separate IDA. I think that would be what I would like to see done.
I mean, and nothing was done set in stone, and Gary was there listening. Nothing is set in stone. I think that in my mind, we have an opportunity to say, what do we want? Best case scenario. We don't want this to become a department of the county. We want this to be a joint EDA town, whatever. That hasn't been shut down. That's not the perception I got. The perception I got was this is, the county's moving in the direction that they want to see it going. Does that make sense? Am I getting that?
Yeah, sure. They're always like that.
Well,
and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe the county's going to take over economic development efforts.
Sure.
Maybe that's, it didn't work out so well for the last,
But if we wanted something different, now's the time to say it
Right.
and find out that door's closing, and then if we need to come up with the way we wanted to do it moving forward. And so I think that was one of the discussions that came out of this was, let's hear it, like what does the town want? And obviously I didn't feel in the position to articulate that, and so I asked for about a month. So we can have 2 work sessions at least today to be able to present it, get you all thinking about it. And then I know it's a short period of time, but really about 3 weeks or so to come up with some sort of direction where we want to
so I
go.
think we have to put it on the, add it to the meeting Monday night for a work session, discussion. And I think we need to have an outline so council could kind of figure out how we're gonna walk through this. I mean, it's so much information to absorb, and there's so many what ifs, so I don't know.
So
Trying to
we
figure
tried
out
to
how we-
distill it down to, let's just say, all things being equal, like the EDA moving forward the way it currently stands today, what role do we want on it? Do we want to change that? And if we change it, what does that look like? So barring lawsuits, barring anything along those lines, what is our ideal of how we want to see the county-town partnership with the EDA? That was my perception of the meeting.
Okay, Gary?
Can we do that meeting in closed session? Just for simple. There may be some questions come up as far as legal advice from Doug that, there's some properties out there that I guess that we both have joint interest in.
Yeah, I think we have to have, and correct me Doug if I'm wrong, much of the discussion has to take place in open. But when it comes to contractual matters and when it comes to the lawsuit itself and the impact thereof, I think that's when we go into executive session
Yeah,
and discuss.
there are specific items you can go into closed meeting, but general things you stay in open.
One more thing in relation to that, and this was said in the public session of the Reform Committee, Dan Whitten, or Doug Stanley had Dan Whitten clarify the double draw situation that we have. And again, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but in essence, basically said that United Bank made the mistakes by issuing the funds without authorization, and they have proof of that. And so, number one, it's United Bank's fault. Number two, they openly admitted that that's how the EDA has been funding their debt liability. I mean, they've basically been using that as cash, paying interest on it, and that they've dwindled it down to $360,000 is left of it. Wow. But that they did admit that that's where their money is. That's where they got their money. That's how they had the cash in the bank, and that remaining of that is $360-some thousand.
I think breaking
So
away from
if-
that is the smart thing to do. And then the person that the town IDA is like a specialist for all things town, person in the county, specialist for all things county, and just keep it separate. That's too messy.
They also went through the plan of their the strategies of getting rid of the buildings that they shouldn't have, and then which ones are on the market and why, which ones are going to hold on to, and that part made sense. But again, just openly admitting that they have a lot of liabilities right now. They did point out the PD needs to get off their books, and we didn't get into it, but it was clear that the interest rate is very important on resolving that. And I said we can take that off their books tomorrow if we can get to the bottom of that. So that did come up in the session as well. So those were the salient points. The biggest thing from this group is, if I go back and say, or if any of us come to this, but yes, we have an interest in figuring out some sort of partnership. No, we don't. We're going to do our own independent IDA. Counties seems like it's leaning towards its own department of the EDA, and I think this group needed to be aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Doug a question? Doug, if the bank mistakenly put $1 million in my bank account and I went out and spent it,
I
And
think
I
that's
said,
a
hey.
great idea for you to spend it.
well, I think it would be too, but if I spent that money, even though it was the bank's fault, is that criminal?
Better not spend
Well,
it.
certainly you're not supposed to spend it. I was joking.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying, isn't that criminal? I think I just seen in the paper here just a week or so ago where somebody had, the bank had mistakenly put so
Oh,
many
yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars in their account, and they went on a spending spree, and now they're
Yeah.
locked up for, I don't know what it's called, but
Yeah.
they're locked up, so.
I'll put it like this, you can get in trouble for it.
So what the EDA is doing now with the money that they mistakenly got, is that
You
illegal?
certainly could be forced to repay it, let's put it like that.
Yeah, I
Sounds
think
like
for,
we're just paying
I think it's
interest on it.
important for the record that the moment the town government found out about the double draws and received information from the EDA as far as their explanations, town officials reported that to the proper authorities, just to, what gave the appearance of something inappropriate. So it's in the appropriate authorities' hands, and where the money came from, whether it was a line of credit, an unsecured line of credit, it's possible, they could be allowed to keep the money and spend it for whatever they choose. So, but again, I think from our perspective, we're not paying for it. Town citizens is not paying for that money. But I think it's important for the record to state that. All right, anything else?
You gotta be careful about statements you just made. The police department's not finished. There's a major punch list still under rule to September 20th, and that contractor may make it or may not make it. There's some liability that they have of not meeting their contract by, what, $56,000? And they could extend, request an extension, plus Mosley's has some billing yet that has not come in, and the contractor still has some billing, and it's not major dollars. So we're probably about 8.3, 8.4, BJ?
We're staying right now at 8.4 is what we currently have.
We got that.
The context was, we're making the liabilities look worse. And my point was simply that we know that's a liability that's gonna get cleared up, not sit there ongoing. Yeah.
Okay, just be aware of
Yeah.
what I just told you.
Yeah.
How much did you say it would be altogether, you think?
8.4.
No, 8.4 is where we
8.4
currently
is
stand.
We
For
think
the
we're-
additional.
That's where
The additional that we haven't done.
The additional is
Your
probably
meeting.
About
60.
About 600,000, so we're probably gonna be right around that million to finance. Now, that's not the total of the police department, that's just what we're financing.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion? Gary?
I just want to say thank you to Councilman Meza, he's doing a great job, for his time and effort, and, representing your family.
Yeah, for the next reform committee, you have kept minutes for all those meetings, right?
I have, up until this one, and the county will be taking the minutes, but it
Oh,
will
perfect.
be in this building.
Perfect, perfect. And then the 22nd, we have our joint meeting.
For
with EDA,
October.
October.
October 22nd.
Okay, any other discussion? Chris?
Yeah, I think everybody got the drafts that Doug put together on the tap fees. So I would like to see us advertise, for option 2, up to a 1-inch line,
Okay,
if everybody's good with that.
I'm not good with that, I think we need to have a work session on
All right, but that's what I want. So, it's fine.
well, did you get a second council member to want that?
I'll second it.
Okay,
So, I'd like to get that advertised.
so he wants to put that on the agenda.
All right, so you want to advertise option 2,
We'll put it on the agenda.
have a public hearing.
The
Have
next
a public
meeting,
hearing.
the next meeting is going
Can't
to
have
the
a public
town.
hearing next meeting, you wouldn't be able to have a public
Not
hearing.
the public
until-
hearing, but we got to put it on the agenda to advertise for a public hearing, is what he's saying.
Well,
You wanna
no,
put it to
no,
a
I can
vote.
go ahead and put it to, we can put it to a vote, but I don't, if I got somebody to second it, we can go ahead and advertise, but it wouldn't be, how long does it have to be advertised?
Has to be advertised 2 weeks prior to the public hearing,
Wait,
so there's
wait,
no
wait.
way.
So, we can go ahead and advertise it, so by the next regular meeting, which would be, what, 3 weeks?
As long as you know what you want to advertise, that's the problem.
Chris, you don't feel you're in opposition to this as being a conflict of interest?
Be a conflict of interest with everything.
Being a contractor, you don't feel that that's not a conflict of interest?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay, all right.
Last up.
Is that a conflict of interest though?
Let me talk to you offline on that.
I mean, we're all town
Money
residents
to
voting
bank.
on town things, so I mean, we could all be a conflict of interest at any given point if that was the measuring stick.
All right, so what we're putting on the agenda for the next meeting?
You wanna put it to a vote, or you want a work session item? You wanna put it to a vote to take it to a public hearing, or?
You're asking for a vote.
Vote for a public hearing at the next meeting.
So you wanna vote, okay. You can vote.
We can vote for a public, to have a public hearing?
Do you have to do it that way? You have to vote at the work session.
No, next
But you
week's
can
The
vote
work
next
work
meeting,
session.
the next meeting, the next
Do we have to
regular meeting.
vote for that, Doug? Or can we just have it put out to a public hearing?
Well, you have to vote on whether or not you want to advertise this for a public hearing.
Okay.
So we can't vote tonight to
Yeah,
advertise,
you can't
that's what I'm
vote
saying,
tonight.
so that's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Yeah.
It's gotta go on a regular meeting for a discussion item to vote, and we'll debate it. Okay,
So
any
the
other
vote
discussion?
is for an advertisement.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, and entertain a motion to go into closed session.